Walmart is the world's largest business, the largest employer. They do over $700 billion of business. They've got operations throughout the world. They employ over 2 million people. And Walmart got started in the 1960s by a farmer out of Arkansas. I'm going to tell you the story about how this farmer created a winning formula that became the world's largest company. And in so doing, created great value for consumers in the United States and around the world, and also wiped out many medium and small-sized businesses, including our own family's business, Weiner Stores. And I'm going to tell you that story. Walmart, early 1960s, a guy named Sam Walton. Sam Walton started with a concept of selling inexpensive merchandise in small town America. And his ideas were very revolutionary. And a couple of them combined together created this juggernaut. So let's go through some of the concepts that Sam started. One is EDLP, everyday low pricing. He decided that he was going to market at a very low price. And instead of running on sales, his idea was that the low price will drive traffic and drive volume. And he focused not on gross margin percent, but on gross margin dollars. So the idea was that if you bought something for $10 and you marked it high-low, $29, but ran it on sale for $19.99, and over a period of a week, you sold 2 of those on average at $19.99. So let's call that $20 of gross margin dollars. He would buy it at $10 and mark it at $17.99. Let's call it $8 of margin dollars, but he would sell 10 in the same time period that somebody marking it high-low would sell 2. And so 10 times $8 was $80 of margin dollars, instead of marking it high and low, $20. And so he was becoming very profitable by selling something at a low price. And that is EDLP. Now, what happens when you sell it for $17.99, buy it for 10, and you sell 8? But what if you marked it $16.99 and you sold 12 and you got more margin dollars? And then you could lower the price again and you'd get even more margin dollars. And so if you're competing against this, it's pretty darn hard. Now, what else is part of this strategy? One of it is everyday low price. A second one is, if you're going to price something at everyday low pricing, you got to have the goods in the stores. Now, the advantage of everyday low pricing in terms of distribution and inventory levels is that when you're running high-low and you're running something to promote it in 2 weeks or 2 months or every other weekend, you have a lot of work to do. You got to send the inventory in ahead of time. It's got to be there before the ads show up. And then when the ad is about ready to go, you got to have somebody in the store put a sign up and maybe move it to a table. Okay. There's work to do. So there's a lot of inventory prep and planning on high-low. For everyday low pricing, you've got to keep the flow constant, and you have to have a logistics distribution system that is extremely efficient. And that's what Sam did. So everyday low pricing, a very sophisticated distribution center and logistics network that lowered the cost of distribution. He became the low-cost provider, a distribution network of merchandise, maybe in the world. He did something else, 3 things. He also had a geography strategy, a location strategy that said, you know what, we're going to go where the other stores aren't. Let's go into rural America. And that's what he did. He provided bigger stores with more variety at lower prices in rural America. Okay. Kmart, the other discounters weren't going into that geography. And so eventually, after he conquered, and he expanded very quickly, because this strategy of EDLP with logistics and rapid expansion means that he controlled the market and he controlled market share. He perfected his operation, and then he started to come into the suburbs, the metros, okay, where he could find the land for his stores. His stores started out typically at 40 to 45,000 square feet. That's the small prototype. And then he added grocers and became a bigger type of store. The prototypes became 100,000 square feet in the small stores, 150,000, eventually prototype 208 and 192, 208,000 square feet, 192,000 square feet. And he kept on adding product. And what happened was there's this concept of trip capture. Trip capture says that, a customer is going to take 100 trips a year for taking care of her needs. If you create a store where, okay, I can capture groceries, which eventually Walmart added, and while I'm there, I can get my cosmetics and drugs, and while I'm there, I can get some clothes, it becomes a trip killer. So instead of going to a clothing store or a drug store and then a grocery store, it was one super center trip killer. And trips started to be stolen from other types of retailers, whether it was grocery stores or clothing stores or drug stores or pet stores, etc. So you've got this combination of EDLP, fantastic, highly efficient logistics distribution network, a geography of where others aren't, and then creating various prototypes of larger and larger boxes to where Walmart added different types of products, and particularly groceries. That transition to groceries was very significant, and it started to steal trips from other retailers. Now, what happened to other retailers? When Walmart built out this strategy of everyday low pricing, amazing logistics, rural expansion, and continually expanding its product line, it created a massive impact in all the competition and all the different types of competition for people who competed with the products for Walmart. It devastated downtowns. It devastated the discount industry and the grocery industry and anybody selling their products, including clothing. And so what happened is that it took market share, and those that didn't survive, those that did survive had to figure out how they were going to differentiate themselves from Walmart, and usually it could not be on price. If you had to compete on price against Walmart, you were toast. So the Walmart effect is this reaction to the Walmart strategy that generally left many companies bankrupt and they had to close their doors. And those that didn't had to create some kind of way to create a differentiated product mix, location mix, whatever it was, to compete effectively against Walmart. Now, Walmart wasn't the only reason, but it was a major reason why our company, our family business, didn't make it.
Weiner Man here at Weiner's for great back-to-school savings on all athletic footwear. We'll save you on all Reebok, Fila, and Converse. Save $5, $10, $15, and even $20.
Weiner's really saved me money on footwear for the whole family.
You gotta love that. But hurry, they're going fast. Remember, citizens, for back to school, Wieners will save you.
It starts with my grandfather, Isidor Weiner, who was born in Eastern Europe around 1894. And he came to the United States right at World War I, the big immigration from Eastern Europe. This is the immigrant story. Didn't come with any money, came with a strong drive and a work ethic, went to New York, eventually ended up in Houston because he had some family members who he had never met before who were here, and he said, I'm coming. And he started selling ladies' hosiery on consignment in the Houston Ship Channel area, door to door. That's how he got started. And then in 1924, he opened up his first stores, his family name, Weiner Stores, and it wasn't in downtown Houston. It was outside of downtown. Most retail till World War II was concentrated in downtowns in pretty much every locality around the country. And here in Houston, he opened up a store on Houston Street, not air conditioned. It was a store probably about 1,500 square feet, and he sold men's, women's, kids' clothing. But it was kind of a working man's store. That was a target. And the story is that during the Depression in 1933, many companies went bankrupt, including my grandfather Isidor's company called Weiner Stores. And he declared Chapter 11, which means he didn't have to pay back his creditors. But he had this ethics that even though he legally wasn't responsible or liable to pay back his creditors, morally he felt like it was his responsibility. So he paid back all of his creditors. He couldn't find two of them who had disappeared during the Depression and the chaos of the Depression, and he hired a detective to trace down those two creditors, and he ended up paying them back. And so that philosophy, that ethics, inspired my father and my uncle, hopefully myself here at Rockstep, to just be very straight, be very ethical, and be very honorable. He had three children, my three sons. In those days, women really weren't part of the business. And the first son, the oldest son, Abe Weiner, my uncle, went into business with my grandfather, and this was right around World War II. And they could not get along personality-wise, and so my uncle, Abe, created a chain of his own stores, which he called Leonard's, and Leonard's had about 11 or 12 stores, and it was competed with my grandfather's store, Weiner's Stores. And then after World War II, my father, Leon, and my uncle, Saul, went to work in the family business. And between Isidore, Leon, and Saul, they started growing the Weiner Store concept in a suburban geography. So in other words, again, downtown was where retail was located, but in the suburban growth after World War II, you had houses being built, you had shopping centers being built, and the shopping centers generally were grocery store, drugstore, and a clothing store, and we were the clothing store. And so over 75 years, this company grew from one store outside of downtown Houston into markets from the Texas Valley, McAllen and Brownsville and Laredo, up to Dallas, Waco, and then we went into Louisiana, Shreveport, down to New Orleans, and that whole kind of triangle is where we had our stores. We had a centralized distribution network, and we became a very good company and a great place to work. We had a very good computer system. We had a good logistics system, and we grew as a company in the 60s and 70s, and eventually Walmart started to enter the scene. One of the things that Walmart did is that they had amazing buying power. So one of the buyers said, Andy, came to me, and this is in the 80s, you know what? I'm thinking of buying 1,500 dozen of this lady's blouse, and I'm going to market it with a low margin at $8.99. Walmart is going to market at $7.99, and they're going to buy 1,000,000 dozen. I mean, just like way, way, way more than us. And as a result, they could price it cheaper, and it was very hard for us to compete. So they had pricing power. Walmart took market share targeting the working man or the working family. And so if, let's take Jasper, Texas, Walmart would open up, and we were there and we were doing $2 million, and Walmart would open up and they would do 10 million. And they would take $500,000 of our, or $300,000 or $100,000 of our $2 million of clothing market share. And that 300,000 of clothing market share was the most profitable. You have the highest margin. Every marginal dollar in retail, more goes to the bottom line because you've got fixed costs. So what Weiner's did is that we tried to say, like what every other retailer would do, how do you compete against this? Okay. So we ran a high-low strategy, which means we marked it higher and then we promoted it every week and ads 52 weeks during the year. And then we also created some brands, and we focused on brands that Walmart didn't have. They couldn't carry Levi's. We were one of the country's leading Levi's carriers. Nike shoes. So there's all these brands that Walmart wouldn't carry, and we were hoping that if we carried these brands, then we would be able to survive against Walmart. Now, the other thing that happened is that there were other competitors besides Walmart, people like Penny's and Sears that were expanding rapidly during the suburban growth of the 70s and 80s. So they were carrying the brand. So we had more competition on the brand side. We had definitely competition on the pricing side at the middle market level from Walmart. But we also had another problem. We had a inventory strategy that was not good. You know, this is just kind of the way it is. My uncle Saul was the merchant, and he was a very hard worker, very honorable guy. Loved to buy merchandise. If there was a deal, he would buy it. And in retail, you have to buy according to a fixed plan. And if you don't buy according to a fixed plan of units and dollars, okay, by separate category within men's, women's, kids, whatever, you would get into a situation where you either didn't have enough merchandise or you had too much. And you would end up with a shortage of sales if there wasn't enough, or too much. You would have merchandise at the end of the season you either had to mark down or do something else with. We ended up usually with too much merchandise. And my uncle wasn't willing to mark the goods down to clear at the end of the two seasons, which was fall and spring. And as a result of not marking the goods down, we would bring them back into a central distribution center, resort them, reprice them, and put them in tens of thousands of body bags that were stored on the roof of a distribution center, and we called them LY, last year's goods. Then the following 6 months later, or 9 months later, we'd bring them out again, last year's goods, and about a third of the merchandise for dresses or blouses or whatever was last year's goods. And the problem with having that excess merchandise that was going out the following season is that the customers knew about it, and it hurts the brand. A second problem is that when you don't clear your merchandise by taking markdowns, a markdown is an expense, you inflate your profits. And you end up having higher profits that were phantom profits. They really weren't real because you should have taken markdowns. And you end up paying taxes on phantom profits. And that cycle of not marking goods down, not buying according to a fixture plan, according to a merchandise plan, a very strict merchandise inventory plan, led to basically a run on cash. And we had to borrow money to open up stores and fund inventory, and it became higher and higher. And eventually we went out of business. The joke was, we did a chapter 29. In effect, that was Chapter 11, we went into bankruptcy, came out, and then we tried to survive for a year or two, didn't make it, did another Chapter 11, and then did a Chapter 7, which is a liquidation. So I call that a Chapter 29. So the question is, we did not survive at our family business because of Walmart, and also because we were not operating at a very efficient strategy for handling merchandise. There was a couple of other issues. Even if we were operating perfectly efficiently, could we have survived against Walmart? Unclear. Okay, it's unclear what would have happened because Walmart was so strong and everybody kind of got out of their way. Okay, you had to figure out, is there enough business at the margins or with a different strategy for whatever kind of product you have to survive against Walmart? And Weiner's did not. And so we're an example of a company that worked hard, in business 75 years, very successful, but we did not own our own real estate, and we leased all of our stores. And as a result, when we went out of business in the late 90s, there was really nothing left. There was no wealth left, nothing left. And I started this business, Rockstep Capital, at that time, and basically started from nothing. And we had and have been very successful and very lucky by working hard and building a great team and a great strategy and building this business.